They pinned the paper to the saloon door just after sunrise. A face sketched in charcoal, a name written in crooked ink, and beneath it, two words that meant everything and nothing at the same time. Wanted, dead or alive. To most people, it was just another outlaw. Another man with blood on his hands and a price on his head. But to one rider, standing across the dusty street, it was breakfast, rent, and survival. He didn't wear a badge. He didn't ride with the law. And no one ever called him a hero. They called him when the law was afraid to ride out. They called him when a man had vanished into the desert. They called him when justice needed a shadow. This is the life of a bounty hunter. In the Wild West, towns were born faster than laws. A railroad would arrive, a mine would open, a river crossing would turn into a settlement overnight. And before a courthouse could be built, trouble already lived there. Sheriffs were few. Judges were far away. Prisons were small or non-existent. So towns invented a solution: the reward poster. A promise written in ink. Bring this man in, and we will pay you. The bounty hunter was not a soldier of the state. He was a private contractor of justice. Some were former soldiers. Some were failed ranchers. Some were criminals who learned it paid better to hunt than to hide. They rode alone or in pairs. They carried rifles, pistols, and coils of rope, and in their saddlebags, folded carefully, were the faces of men they had never met. Tracking a man was not heroic. It was slow, dirty work. A bounty hunter followed broken branches, boot prints in dry riverbeds, ashes from cold campfires. He questioned bartenders, paid stable boys for gossip, listened to whispers in card games. Outlaws rarely stayed still. They drifted from mining camp to cattle town, from river ferry to desert canyon. They changed names. They shaved beards. They wore borrowed coats. The hunter learned to read fear. When a waitress flinched at a name, when a shopkeeper pretended not to hear a question, when a gambler suddenly left the table, each sign pointed toward a man who did not want to be found. The words on the poster were clear: dead or alive. But they carried a terrible meaning. Alive meant risk. A captured outlaw could fight, could escape, could stab you in your sleep. Dead meant certainty, but it also meant blood on your hands. Some hunters always tried for alive. They used ambush, surprise, and ropes. They waited until night. They struck while a man slept. Others didn't bother. A rifle shot from a ridge, a bullet through a window, and the job was finished before the outlaw ever saw his hunter's face. The town paid either way, but the hunter paid with something else. Every face he brought in started to look like another. Another life cut short. Another story never told. When a bounty hunter finally found his target, time slowed. Sometimes it happened in a saloon, the outlaw laughing too loudly, his gun resting close to his hand. Sometimes it happened on the trail, a lone rider ahead, unaware of the eyes behind him. The hunter would think of three things: distance, cover, escape. If the outlaw ran, the chase could last hours. Through brush, through rivers, through stone canyons that echoed with gunfire. If the outlaw turned to fight, it became a dance of smoke and fear. Two men, standing between life and dirt. There was no crowd cheering, no music, only breath, wind, and the sound of metal being drawn. Bringing a man back alive was harder than killing him. A prisoner had to be fed, guarded, watched through the night. Rope burned the wrists. Chains slowed the horse. Some prisoners begged. Some cursed. Some promised gold hidden somewhere in the hills. The hunter learned not to listen. When the town finally appeared on the horizon, there was no parade, no welcome. The sheriff took the outlaw. The clerk counted the money. And the hunter stood alone in the street. One man gone, another job finished. Bounty hunters were feared, but they were also needed. Families wanted sons returned. Banks wanted thieves caught. Railroads wanted examples made. Yet the hunter lived between worlds, too violent for polite society, too lawful for the outlaw camps. He slept in barns. He drank alone. He moved on when people started asking questions. And sometimes he hunted men who looked too much like himself. Former soldiers, former cowboys, former friends. Because in the West, losing your job could mean losing your future. And losing your future could mean picking up a gun. Stories grew around bounty hunters. Some said they never missed. Some said they had killed dozens. Some said they enjoyed it. But most were tired men with sore backs and heavy thoughts. They carried scars under their coats, bullet wounds, knife marks, memories that never healed. The posters showed monsters, but the men were often desperate, broken, or running from something worse. The hunter knew this, and still he rode. Because stopping meant starvation. Stopping meant becoming the thing he hunted. Every bounty hunter dreamed of one final job, one reward big enough to quit, enough to buy land, enough to build a house, enough to never ride again. Sometimes it worked. A hunter would vanish from the trail, open a store, raise cattle, try to forget. But many never reached that ending. They died in canyons, on dusty roads, in rooms where no one knew their name. Their bodies were found with posters still folded in their pockets. Wanted men hunting, wanted men, until both disappeared into the same dirt. The bounty hunter was never meant to be a hero. He lived in the space between law and chaos, between justice and survival, between mercy and necessity. The poster said, "Dead or alive," but it never said what it cost. It cost sleep. It cost peace. It cost the slow loss of believing that the world could be made right. And yet, without him, the roads would have been darker, the towns quieter, the outlaws braver. So he rode, from poster to poster, from name to name, not because he loved the hunt, but because the West left him no other way to live. And somewhere, even now, in the memory of dusty walls and faded ink, a face still waits beneath two unforgiving words: wanted, dead or alive.